Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into something really strange, an unexplained event, but one that was actually caught on camera.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking a deep dive using a source called Unseen, Aokigahara Forest Disappearance.
All right.
And our mission really is to unpack what this document tells us about this specific, quite mysterious incident. We'll look at the details, the investigation it describes, and maybe explore some of the ideas it puts forward.
And the setting the document describes is, well, it's key, isn't it? Japan's Aokigahara Forest.
Yeah.
A place that already has this, let's say, somber and quite eerie reputation.
Widely known as the suicide forest, unfortunately.
Exactly. Which just adds this whole other layer of gravity, and mystery to anything unusual happening there.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's get right into the core incident that's detailed in this document. It talks about 2003, a standard security camera, just, forest monitoring.
Yeah, routine stuff.
And it captured something truly bizarre.
Right. The footage, or at least the description of it in the source, shows this lone man walking into the woods.
Okay.
And the description really emphasizes he was moving slowly, seemed calm, no obvious distress or anything.
The walking?
Just walked a certain distance in, stopped, and stood there, still, right in the middle of the forest frame.
And this is where reading the description, it gets really unsettling. Because the man didn't walk away. He didn't, duck behind a tree.
No obstruction, yeah.
The document states he just vanished.
Faded away. That's the precise term used to describe what the camera apparently recorded.
Faded away. Wow. Okay.
And what's fascinating and frankly baffling reading this account is the immediate aftermath.
What did they do?
Well, the document details that search teams went to that exact spot the very next day.
Right away.
Yeah, conducted a thorough search apparently, but found nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely no footprints leading away from that spot, no belongings, no physical trace of the man at all.
Zero trace after he was just standing right there. That's wild.
It is, though the document does note one peculiar detail they found at the scene.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
The soil on the path where he had been walking looked recently disturbed, like someone had passed through.
Okay, so some sign of passage.
But crucially, the document mentions no prints leading away from the specific point where he faded on camera.
Right. That's the key bit. Okay, so how did investigators even begin to tackle something like that? I mean, it sounds impossible. What does the document say about the investigation?
Well, it describes a pretty rigorous effort, actually. Lasted a decade, according to the source. Investigators trying to make sense of this footage.
A decade. Wow.
Yeah, they explored all the sort of conventional things you'd expect, right?
Like the camera messing up.
Exactly. Technical glitches, equipment errors, even the possibility someone had tampered with the video.
Right. Standard procedure for weird footage. And what did they find? Anything.
Here's the thing. The document explicitly states they found no evidence. Nothing to support any of those conventional explanations.
No.
None. The footage seemed authentic. The camera was apparently working correctly. No signs of digital manipulation detected. The event, just as it was captured, seemed to defy well-known technical limitations.
Huh. And this wasn't presented as just a complete one-off fluke either, was it? The document mentions other weird stuff around the same time.
That's right, yeah. It notes that in the weeks before this main disappearance, 2 other cameras in different parts of the forest also captured unexplained things involving human-like figures.
What kind of things? What happened in those cases?
Well, the description is similar in a way. Figures were seen walking into the camera's view, and then just seconds later, they weren't there anymore.
Gone again.
Gone again. And the document also says that none of the people seen in any of these recordings, the main one or these earlier ones, were ever identified.
So this central vanishing wasn't totally isolated, and investigators couldn't blame the tech. It leaves you with the question the document itself seems to be asking, right? Were these people ever really physically there in the way we understand it?
Precisely. It challenges, our basic ideas of presence and disappearance.
Yeah.
And this is where the document sort of pivots. It brings in another perspective to try maybe frame these inexplicable events.
Ah, the local folklore stuff.
Exactly. Local folklore and theories connected to the forest itself.
It mentions Japanese folklore, specifically spirits called yurei.
Described in the source as restless ghosts, often tied to places associated with deep sadness or sudden death.
Which, fits the reputation of Aokigahara perfectly.
It certainly resonates, yeah. And the document notes that while these entities, the yurei, are typically thought to be invisible to the naked eye, the folklore suggests some people claim to feel their presence.
And the document gets a bit more specific, doesn't it? It talks about feeling like something's watching you.
Yeah, or even actively trying to influence you. Maybe even pulling you back if you try to leave the forest.
Yeah.
That's the kind of unsettling description provided.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Exactly. And by putting this folklore next to the unexplained physical disappearance, the document seems to be exploring a completely different kind of framework.
It's not just mentioning Yurei randomly.
No, it connects it. It asks, maybe implicitly, what if that man in the video wasn't actually alone? What if something described in this folklore? What if it took him?
So the document lays out the cold facts. The footage, the investigation hitting a dead end on normal explanations.
Right.
And then it layers on this chilling possibility drawn from local belief that something unseen might have been directly involved, suggesting he was actually taken.
It deliberately leaves you sitting with that uncertainty, I think. You have the scientific approach hitting a wall, but the camera undeniably recorded something that defies explanation. And then folklore offers this other lens, even if it's outside, empirical proof.
It definitely makes you confront the limits of our usual understanding. Okay, so just to recap our deep dive into this document, Unseen, Aokigahara Forest Disappearance. We've looked at the core mystery it presents. This man vanishing on camera in 2003 in Aokigahara. And the key thing, extensive searches found absolutely no physical trace of him, except for that weird, disturbed soil detail.
And the source really emphasizes how unresolved it all is. Despite that decade of investigation, experts studying the footage, no conventional explanation fit what was seen.
Right.
And crucially, the document notes that nothing quite like this specific vanishing, the complete, trace-free fading on camera, was ever recorded or seen again, as it puts it in this context.
Then we saw how the document presents both sides, the attempts at scientific investigation, but also bringing in those folklore-based ideas about Yurei. It highlights that ultimately the event is left, just as the title says, unexplained, an unseen phenomenon, somehow caught on film.
Yeah, it really resists giving you a neat answer. Instead, it just presents the facts as they appeared, visually at least, and the profound questions that come up when those facts just completely break our expectations of the physical world.
Which leaves us with, I guess, a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider drawing just from the ideas in this source material. Perhaps something truly unseen, something operating outside our normal understanding of physics or presence. Perhaps it was at play in that forest? Or maybe the very nature of reality is just far more complex, more elusive than we usually assume, especially when we're faced with things that totally evade normal explanation, leave zero physical trace, and yet somehow impossibly they show up on camera.
A genuinely unsettling possibility to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the unknown, guided by the insights we found in the document Unseen, Aokigahara Forest Disappearance.
Yeah, thanks for diving deep with us today.